As many of you know, I love to read and talk about the books that I am reading on this show. Now, I tend to focus a lot on nonfiction, but recently I came across a fiction book that was so powerful, that had such a lovely and different message, that I had to come and share it with you. I'm so honored to have the author of this book called A Christmas Carol on the show today. We're going to be discussing the book with Faith Moore. I'm Julie Hartman, and this is Timeless. Hey everyone, and welcome to Timeless. It is great to be with you as always. Just a reminder to please hit the subscribe button down below so that you can stay notified with every new piece of content that I post. On Mondays on this channel, you can catch my show with Dennis Prager called Dennis and Julie. That premieres at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And then, of course, Timeless is Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at the same time. Faith Moore is a freelance writer and editor. Prior to becoming a stay-at-home mom of her two boys, she taught elementary school for 10 years. Faith has been published in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Daily News, Acculturated, The Federalist, and more. She wrote a book challenging the feminist critiques of Disney princesses called Saving Cinderella: What Feminists Get Wrong About Disney Princesses and How to Set It Right. And this week, her debut novel, Christmas Carol, was released, which she calls, quote, a modern twist on Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Hi, Faith. Welcome to Timeless.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, the audience may be a little confused because I said in the introduction that I came across this book, and then I just told everyone that it came out this week. I just want to clarify that I was lucky enough to get a little bit of a sneak peek, which, Faith, you were very kind to send to me. But people are probably thinking, what's your inside scoop for getting books early, Julie?
You are lovely and have a lovely podcast, and I'm so happy to have gotten to share it with you. I'm so glad you read it.
No, it was so nice of you to send it to me. Just wanted to clarify. But yes, it came out yesterday. Congratulations. This is so cool that you have this novel, and you wrote a book, as I just mentioned, but that is different from a novel. So let's talk about what this book is about. I could give my synopsis, but I want to hear it straight from the author.
Sure. So the book is called Christmas Carol. It is a modern retelling of Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol, but the Scrooge character has been reimagined as a workaholic mom named Karol, whose miserliness is not about her money the way Scrooge's is, but about her time and how much time she chooses to spend or not spend with her family. So then on Christmas Eve, she goes through, she hits her head and she ends up in this very strange hospital and is taken basically on a tour, just like Scrooge, through her past, present, and future, in the hopes that she will remember what really matters, which is her family.
Yes, it is a book, as I told you before the show, that I think so many people need to read because it's so against kind of the in vogue cultural push to be the girl boss and to work, and you don't need to succumb to the patriarchy of being a mother and a wife. And so I loved it for that reason. And as I said to you, I feel like it was sort of a book that I needed to read. Because even though I really do want a family one day and I care so much about that, I even find myself falling a bit into that trap. So it's just a book that I think has lessons for everyone, but especially for young women right now.
Thanks. You know, it's funny because when I set out to write it, I was just trying to tell a story. And I think that that's really important. It's a distinction that's important to make, which is that this is not a manifesto or an argument for something. It really is just a story, and it came to me as a story. But obviously all stories have themes and ideas that communicate to the readers, and it might be a different message or theme for you than it is for somebody else. But I think that, it certainly ended up that it's a story that has themes about kind of stepping outside of the narrative that we're currently being told about what it means to be successful, what it means to kind of go out there in the world and be a woman, and kind of maybe stepping back just a little bit and trying to take a look at our lives from a different perspective. And that's kind of what Karol gets to do in the story. She gets to step outside of her life and take a look at what she's missing back at home. And I think, we could all do with a little bit of that kind of insight into the life that we're currently living.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things that I loved about watching and reading Dickens' A Christmas Carol growing up, because it forces you to kind of, again, as you say, examine your own life and what you may not be doing well. So I'm interested to know, why did you decide to write a book that sort of paralleled the Dickens book?
Yeah. So the thing to know just right off the bat is that my family has a tradition of watching A Christmas Carol, the movie. We watch the Alistair Sim version of A Christmas Carol every single Christmas time.
Oh,
You cannot miss it in our family. Every single year, we all sit down. It's kind of a ritual. You have to be silent. No one's allowed to talk. The whole thing. We all sit down together and watch this movie. So this is a story that's kind of imprinted on my heart. And so, it's one of those things where, we have all the inside jokes in our family. A lot of them are just kind of lines from this movie, and those lines are kind of emotional touchstones for us that mean different things for us. So the story is something that is very, very close for me, and very kind of tied to my sort of emotional experience and my family experience. So what happened was, it was the pandemic and kind of the tail end of it at Christmas time. And what had been happening during the pandemic was that all of the working parents who normally were going off to work had come home during lockdown, and they were suddenly having to work full time from home and parent full time from home, because everybody was stuck together in the house. And I was kind of on the outside of this looking in, because I had been a stay-at-home mom since my first child was born. I have an almost 9-year-old, and I also have a almost 3-year-old. But since my almost 9-year-old was born, I'd been home. So I was kind of watching these people suddenly coming to grips with the fact that having it all is really not something that you can do. But the other thing that they were noticing, which I found really interesting, was that they were realizing how wonderful it was to be at home with their kids, and to see what their kids were doing, and to experience them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and to learn kind of like more about them, and who they were, and their personalities, and the things that they liked. And everybody was kind of like, this is such a wonderful time, even though it's horrible that COVID is here. And then the pandemic ended, and everybody went back to work. And so it was that Christmas time when we were watching the movie. I feel, we always say in my family, like, every time we watch the movie, we experience something new, or we notice something new. And it was that Christmas, and I watched the movie, and I thought, oh, that's so interesting. Here is a story about a person who gets that same kind of perspective shift, and is given the opportunity to change. I mean, the wonderful thing about the Scrooge story is that even though he has this whole supernatural experience, he comes out the other side, and materially everything is the same, right? He's still old. His fiance is still gone. His nephew grew up without him. Everything that was kind of wrong in his life is still there. But his perspective has shifted, his perspective has changed, and that is everything for him. And so I kind of thought, well, what would it take? What would it take for some of these parents to actually make a shift based on what they learned? And so those two kind of parts of my life came together in that way.
That is so interesting that you grew up watching that. It's such a great movie. And I have to say, as I've gotten older, it's gotten a little bit more difficult for me to watch, because again, I think, as we've been saying, it forces you to look back at your own life and look at yourself now and contemplate if you're doing things well. I find the scenes at the beginning of the movie where the ghost of Christmas past comes in to haunt Scrooge, and he's looking at his Christmases as a child. I find that to be so hard, honestly, as I get older, because it makes me think, gosh, that time is gone for me, and did I appreciate it enough? And am I doing enough now to enjoy these Christmases that I still have with my parents, even though they're older? Will I have a family one day to share these Christmases with? There's something about this holiday that can be so joyous, but also can give you a lot of pangs and cause for contemplation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Christmas holds within it, I think, a sense of nostalgia.
Yeah.
I think that because it's something, if we celebrate Christmas and we have since childhood, it's something that is filled up with our childhood, whatever that was, and whatever the traditions were, and the things that we did with our family of origin. And then we grow up and we take those things with us, or we don't, or we miss them. It really is a holiday that's all about kind of looking backwards. And I think that's partly why the story of A Christmas Carol is set
Hmm.
during Christmas time. And I think in my story, in Christmas Carol, the past, the ghost of Christmas past, and the things that she sees there definitely are the kind of sad things, because those are
Yes.
and for Scrooge too, in Dickens' story, because it's through those things that we see how the Scrooge character became the way he is. And that's really, really important. It was important to me that Carol was a character that you could ultimately like, because if she's just kind of evil and she just hates her children and she hates her husband and she's just going to go to work because she's bad, then why should we root for her? Why should we care what happens to her, etc.? So it's important to be able to look back on those past scenes and see, oh, like these are the things that happened to her along the way that caused her to make the decisions that put her where she is now. And that kind of gives us, the reader, a little bit of empathy for her, I hope.
Totally. I can say as a reader, I had a lot of empathy for her. At the beginning of the story, I wasn't enamored with her, which I don't
Great,
think
good.
makes me unique. Just to give some background. So Carol, which by the way is spelled with a K, I should say. And I want to ask you, Faith, why you made that decision. I'm sure there's an answer, but Carol spelled with a K, and Carol is this, some would say, badass girl boss lawyer. She works at this law firm and she has kids, and she is very much about efficiency, getting things done. She's a workaholic. And there's this, we can talk about the cookie scene, but basically there is this part of the book where she is supposed to be making cookies with her kids and she chooses to stay at work. And she kind of makes this joke, or says this line, well, I'm a bad mom anyway. And so at the beginning, you kind of are looking at this character and you're like, come on, spend time with your kids. You've probably made a lot of money. You've done really well. Go home and be with them. But then, as you say, Faith, when Carol, when we go back and look at some earlier scenes of Carol's life, she really has a lot of trauma that she's been through. And it's very sad, and it humanizes her in a way. And you almost don't feel like you can blame her as much for being this workaholic and being so invested in her job.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that is exactly what I set out to do. That's exactly the kind of person that I set out to create, is someone who you start off sort of thinking like, oh, who is this person and why should I root for her? She's so awful. In the same way as Scrooge, right? In the Dickens story, you're kind of like, gosh, this man is just a terrible, awful person. But then I wanted to show you how and why she came to be that way. And it is because of trauma in her life. It's because she was trying to kind of take care of the people that she loved and the people
Mm-hmm.
that she thought she was responsible for. And, and kind of not realizing that it was that she could ask for help, or, if that there might be a different way to go. And so it's through those scenes of the past that, I hope that you kind of see that this is kind of where she came from. And I think, that's probably relatable to real life, in the sense that, people are making choices based on what they think is right, or what they think was what they're supposed to do. I mean, people aren't generally bad or evil. I mean, there are some evil people, but most people are doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. And I think that for most of us, we're trying to take care of our families and take care of our kids and do the job that we think we're supposed to do. And so, it's that step back that allows you to see how you got here, and maybe kind of have a little compassion for yourself, and also kind of take stock of, well, is this where I want to be? What's happening? Why is this happening to me? And can I make a change? So I think that's part of it. And Karol with a K, back to your question about that, is actually, I had her as Karol with a C to begin with. It was Christmas Carol with a C, but in the editing process, we kind of decided that it needed to have its own space so that if you searched for it, you wouldn't come up with Dickens. And so it was really just a sort of logistical decision to make it be with a K.
I was wondering if it might have had something to do with Clavin, which, by the way, I didn't acknowledge that Faith is Spencer Clavin's sister. Spencer Clavin is a celebrity in his own right, but he's especially a celebrity on Timeless. He's the most interviewed guest here. We have him on once a month for the Thinker of the Month series. And of course, if you're brothers with Spencer, that means that you are the daughter of Andrew Clavin. So I was wondering, maybe it's a nod to the family, but it makes sense for those reasons you outlined.
Well, I love that, and I'm going to use it next time.
Good. I'm glad I gave that to you. You should just say to them, I love you all so much. It was an ode to you to do Karol with a K.
I'm going to say that from now on, and every time anybody asks, that's what I'm going to say.
Well, I want to go back again to that scene that I was discussing at the beginning of the book. And that line specifically, well, I'm a bad mom. I can't remember exactly how she said it. Maybe you can jump in and clarify, but it was, I sort of took it as a little bit of a joke, and certainly it seemed like it was a defense mechanism of, I'm acknowledging this. I know I'm a bad mom. It is what it is. I'm just going to throw it out there. There's nothing that I can do about it. And I told you, Faith, that it reminded me of some moms that I have seen in my own life. Growing up in Los Angeles, I've been around a lot of Hollywood people, and I remember being really young and looking at some of my friends' moms who have these huge, just amazing careers. And I remember thinking they were so, so cool, but a lot of them would sort of make those, I guess, jokes, or again, say those kinds of lines. And so when I read that with Karol, it reminded me of these mothers. And my question for you is, do you think that these moms who are trying to do their best, and, I think it's very easy to maybe smear them as selfish and narcissistic. And as we've been talking about, you really humanize Karol and show that it's more complicated than that. But do you think that these moms know to a large extent that they are maybe not going down the right path by focusing totally on work and not on their family? Before we continue with Faith, I want to quickly tell you about MyPillow. I use a lot of MyPillow products, including the My Slippers, the MyPillow kitchen towel sets, and a lot more. And you can get many of these products at a discount if you use the promo code Hartman, which is my last name spelled Hartman. For a limited time, you'll receive 60% off of the Giza Dream Sheets. That comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. You'll get a set for as low as $39.99. And for a limited time, with any purchase, you'll get Mike Lindell's softcover book free with the promo code Hartman. Just go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square and use the promo code Hartman. Along with this offer, you will get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow mattress topper, the aforementioned MyPillow towel sets, and more. Call 1-800-566-6745 and use the promo code Hartman. Or again, go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman. Do you think that these moms know to a large extent that they are maybe not going down the right path by focusing totally on work and not on their family?
Well, I guess I can't speak for them, but I think that there's a lot of guilt that comes with being a mom. It comes with being a mom regardless of what choices you make about raising your kids, or who you choose to leave your kids with or not. You just, guilt is just part of the picture. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, in the book, that scene is sort of, Karol is kind of being flip. She's saying she's basically saying, I have to go and, you make the cookies that I was supposed to make because, and who cares, because I'm a bad mother anyway. They're going to have much more fun with you. And Bo, the husband, says, well, no, they would do anything with you. They would watch paint dry if it was with you. They want to be with you. They don't care what you're doing. And she's like, no, they want to be with you. And that's kind of part of the journey that I tried to set Karol on, is a journey first away from her understanding of herself as a mother and then back toward it. And the way that she goes away from it is in really convincing herself and really believing that she's not a good mom, that she's better at work. And I think that that is a way that a lot of people feel, is that, at work, things are very clear. You have your job. If you do a good job, you get a promotion, you get a raise, you have check-ins with your boss, and he tells you whether you're doing a good job or what's happening, and you feel really successful. Whatever you're supposed to be doing, if it's happening, then great, you're doing a good job. If it's not, then you have to kind of step up your game. Parenthood is not like that. I always say that motherhood is not my job, it's my vocation. It's the thing that I'm called to do, and it's the great work of my life. If it was my job, it would be a terrible job because there is no pay and there is no promotion or raises and there's no positive feedback. So if I think that that's sort of part of where the guilt comes from. Also, I think if you're choosing to go to work and leave your kids at home, you're going to have some guilt about that too, because I think deep down we all know that at least when our kids are very small, they need us. Studies have shown that time and again, that our kids need us when they're small. And so I think that certainly for Karol in the story, that was a statement that comes from guilt. And I wanted to put it right there in the beginning so that you could see it, come back to it later and see like, oh, okay, this is why she is the way she is, not because she just hates her kids or something like that.
Right. And also in that exchange between Karol and Beau, her husband, there was sort of this idea that I think that you suffused well without being in your face about it, where Karol kind of has this idea that like her gender role as a mother doesn't matter. Like you're a parent, Beau, I'm a parent, they'll just be with you. And it's like, no, obviously children need their fathers, but children need that time with their mothers. And it's a different interaction. It's a different vibe, for lack of a better word, It's a different relationship. And so I thought that was a really nice way of kind of again, hinting at that cultural in vogue idea that we have that like, parents are just interchangeable.
Yeah, and it was really important to me that Beau was not a sort of effeminate man.
Right, he's not.
That he, because he's not a stay-at-home dad. They have a full-time nanny because he is someone who can work from home. He's a painter, he's an artist. And so he has a little studio in their house and he's there much more than Karol is there, even though he is working. And he is the parent that, if somebody has to stay home sick or, pick up from school or whatever, he's the one. And it was important to me that he not be a kind of effeminate guy, that we liked him and cared about him as Karol's husband, as the man in the family. And that, as you say, something that was wrong with the family was that here was the man, and he's a good man. I mean, he's my favorite character, and I hope that everybody likes him too. But, he is the man and the head of the household, and that what's missing is Karol to sort of slot in the mother role, in the female role. But she is doing what I think a lot of women feel they have to do now, which is sort of trying to be like men, to be more masculine. And it's not working for any of them.
What would you say to someone who would make the charge that you are romanticizing motherhood and you are coming for women in your book who are, in the workforce, and that women should be allowed to be workaholics just as much as men? What would be your response to those critics?
Well, I think that's completely true. Women are allowed to do whatever they want. Women are allowed to go to work or not go to work. I think I would just argue that if you're choosing to have children, and not everyone has to choose to have children, but if you are choosing to have children, why not spend the time with them that you can while you can? And that's one of the other themes of the book, is that with children, there is no later.
Yes.
You can't come back when your work is done and then parent. You have to parent when your kids are there. And the truth of it really is that the time when your kids are there is really small. Within the scope of your entire life, You know, like for example, I have my toddler, he's almost 3 and he was home with me full time. And I wrote this book. I mean, by the way, I wrote this book
It's
while I was staying
amazing.
home because when he went to sleep for a nap, every day at about an hour, I sat down and I wrote. So it's not like parenthood is a complete amputation of everything else. It's just a sort of reprioritization of your life for a time, because now, so he was home with me full time, but now he's in a little bit of nursery school. Next year he'll be in pre-K and then in kindergarten, and then, and then off they go and on and on. And my career or my life as a writer can grow in proportion to that. So we don't have to give up, so I'm not suggesting that everybody just gives up their career ambitions and aspirations and stays home in, colors for the rest of their life. I'm only suggesting that maybe it doesn't have to be the way that society is kind of setting it up to be. It doesn't have to follow this narrative of, graduate, go to work, and then just kind of climb that ladder until you're done. Maybe you can sort of step off the ladder the way that Karol gets to do, and take a moment to be with your kids, because this only happens once.
Yes. And you get a sense of that when, both in your Christmas Carol and Dickens' Christmas Carol, there's the point of the book where the characters go back in time and look back at their childhood, and they realize that only happened once, for better or for worse. You can't go back to that time. And so, yes, it is absolutely the same with kids. What's also interesting is that there's a accident, or there's an event, with Karol and Rockefeller Center, and
Right.
in Dickens' A Christmas Carol with Ebenezer Scrooge, and then the death of the gosh, I'm forgetting, what did Scrooge do for his job? What?
He's a money lender.
That's right. That's right. And who was the guy? What was the name of the coworker who died?
Well, his coworker is Jacob Marley. So in
Marley.
mine, yes, it's Marley Jacobs. But actually, in Scrooge, there isn't really like an event like in Christmas Carol. So in Christmas Carol, yeah, she like hits her head, and
Right.
that's kind of what takes us through. But Scrooge just kind of gets visited one day by
But
by the
isn't it
ghost.
after Marley dies? Gosh, it's been the last time I watched it was last Christmas. I need to buff up again on
Yeah,
Dickens.
actually, Marley has been dead, I think, 7 years
Oh, you're
when the
right.
story starts. So yeah,
Okay. You
but he died that day. It's the anniversary of his death, and so
that's
his spirit has come back for some reason.
Yes. Okay. So that's what I meant with Dickens. It takes the spirit of a dead person coming back to kind of set Scrooge on this journey. And with Carol, it takes her falling and hitting her head to set her on this journey. And so it raises the question, does it take a death, a fall, a trauma, something going wrong in your life to awaken you and set you on a journey to rectify things?
Well, I hope not. I hope that maybe for some people, what it takes is reading a book called Christmas Carol by Faith Moore,
Yes.
because I think that really it's just, those are, in a novel we would call it like an inciting incident, right? Like those are the inciting incidents that set the character on the path that you want them to take in the novel. And in our life, there are also inciting incidents, as you say, like people deaths or injuries or close calls, like with your kids or some things, and then you realize you need to be more present or whatever. But I also think that it could just be as small as realizing that you are on a path that you never questioned. I think some people, maybe their career is what they meant to do. They really set out to do this, and they've made choices, about the kind of balance of time with their kids and time with their work, and that's their choice. But I think for a lot of people, they're just kind of operating within what they think is the quote unquote right thing, the thing that they're supposed to be doing. And so I think sometimes it's just a little bit of stepping outside, and also kind of realizing, I think a lot of people say like, well, we can't afford it, or, what would I do with my time or whatever. And I think you have to step outside of that too, because I think obviously some people cannot afford it, and then they have to work. But I think for other people, it's sort of like, well, you can't afford it living the lifestyle that you're currently living, but could you change? And that's a question for each person. So I think it can be smaller than, hitting your head in Rockefeller Center on Christmas Eve.
Yes, and I love your answer that you hope it doesn't take an event like that. You just hope that people read your book and see it happen to someone else and
Right.
realize that an inciting incident, as we're calling it, could happen to them. You know, and so what I love about your book and about Dickens' book is that you can kind of live through the character and realize in your own life that you can make the change without the death, without the fall. Because really it just is the case in life that for better or for worse, the times when people do wake up is when those incidents happen to them. So if we have the wisdom to make changes before an event like that happens, I mean, God bless.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think that, taking a step back is always a good option, and sort of looking at your life from the outside could always kind of lead you to some kind of reflection that might help you to move forward.
Yes. So I'm contemplating how much of the ending we want to give away. I mean, I think we've sort of already talked about how it's a nice ending, you know, and Karol does kind of have this awakening. Are you willing to give a synopsis? Do you want to leave it for the viewers to read? And even if you can't totally give it away, what is one of the primary messages that you want people to take away from Karol's experience?
Yeah, so I don't do spoilers. So I think
Okay.
like we
I'm
shouldn't we
glad I
shouldn't say
asked.
exactly what happens. Yeah,
Yes,
that's true. But I will say it follows pretty closely the structure of Charles Dickens'
right.
A Christmas
It
Carol.
does.
So you can expect her to kind of come out the other side a better person. And but I don't want to spoil how that happens or exactly, what she realizes. But I think, one thing I will say is that the a pivotal scene in the book, and I won't say where it comes or why it happens, but is Karol kind of looking at her daughter. She has two kids, and she's looking at her daughter doing something that her daughter is really, really good at. And she's watching her do that thing, and she suddenly realizes this will never come again. This exact thing at this exact moment, exactly how it's happening, this will never come again. And if I am not here, I'm going to miss not only this moment, but every single other moment just like it. I'm missing it all. And I can't come back when my work is done. I have to be here now. And so I think, you know, I'm always sort of hesitant to say what the message of the book is, because
Right.
I hope that different people will get different things from it. But I think, if anything, my hope is that it's a story that touches you because Karol's life touches you. And if you see yourself in Karol or in any of the other characters in the book, and you feel like something is not quite right in your life or missing in your life, that perhaps it's a story that could help lead you to whatever you need. And it's not just Karol. Another of my favorite characters in the book is Fran, Karol's sister. And the reason she's my favorite is because she's much more like me. Her dreams are motherhood and family,
Mm-hmm.
and Karol is kind of like, what are you even talking about? Those are not dreams. So it may not be Karol that speaks to you, it may be somebody else, in the story. And I hope that it touches you in some way. And that's really just that's it. That's my hope.
Well, I can say again, as someone who read it, it is an incredibly touching story. And, you know, in that scene too, where Karol's looking at her daughter, I think Karol may have had the realization, and not only that those moments with your children are here and then they're gone, you can never get them back, but also just as we're created in God's image, our children are literally created in our image. I mean, they are the, you know, I'm saying this and I'm kind of laughing at myself because I don't have children, but I can imagine that you look at your child and you literally see you, because you are, in the case of being a biological parent, 50% of that child. And so it's, you know, if you make your child's life better and you invest that time in them and you see them flourishing, and especially if you've had something to do with it, it's sort of like your next opportunity at life through your own children. Again, I imagine. I'm just surmising as a 24-year-old who doesn't have any kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, but I also think one of the amazing things about parenthood is realizing that your kids are not you, and how different they are, and how they're their own people. I mean, I noticed that right away. Both of my kids are completely different people to each other. And, they have their own personalities, and that's another thing that you miss. if you kind of aren't there, as Karol's not there, if you're just not there, you don't see exactly who they are. And that's another thing that Karol kind of notices all of a sudden, is sort of like, oh my gosh, my son is funny, my kid is smart, and all of these things that, you might not know if you're just kind of thinking like, oh yeah, they're me, they're my
Right.
kids, they're
Right.
fine. So it's kind of this magical thing that you get to watch these little people turn into people. It's amazing.
Well, I look forward to it one day, and I know that you are in it now with your two boys, and I just wanted to congratulate you on writing this wonderful, deeply touching book. I enjoyed it so much. And
Thank you.
and all while raising two boys under 10. Kudos to you for
Well,
being
thanks.
for doing your vocation well, and also for working. You are, I think you are someone who all of us can look up to on getting motherhood and work right. So,
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you to say. I really appreciate that.
and as a reminder to everyone, the book is called Christmas Karol, as we have been saying Carols with a K, as a nod to the family. And you can find out more about Faith on faithkmore.com. Is K for Clavin?
K is for Clayton.
K is for
Yes.
Clavin. Okay.
In this case, yes.
In
is
that
true.
case, it is. Okay, so yes, faithkmore.com, and please do order Christmas Karol. It is a great book for any time of the season, but especially as Christmas is coming up, it'll make an excellent Christmas present. Faith, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for being here. I'll see you on this program soon. Take care.